Good morning, folks. My name is Dustin Jones, one of the older adult faculty, and today we're going to talk about why every single clinician is indeed a geriatric clinician. I'm incredibly biased here, right? I am a self-proclaimed Geri PT, but I want y'all to hear me out, regardless of your setting, regardless of your niche, your specialization, who you really want to work with. I want to try and three things to think about on why geriatrics should matter to you, even if you don't see yourself as a geri clinician. I want to start off just by defining geriatrics and what that is, because I think it gets a bad rep. We have a lot of negative connotations. I have a lot of negative connotations around that word. I don't use it a lot with my patients. But geriatrics is that specialized area or branch of medicine where we're focused on caring for that older adult and what comes along with that. Some of the common conditions that many of us are really focused on, diseases, but then also the burden of decline that we can see with age. How do we help people manage the end of their life? And so it is a relatively new area of medicine and definitely of rehabilitation, because we haven't had the capacity to live as long as what we have thanks to modern medicine. So it was first coined in 1909, which I find kind of surprising. Dr. Nasher is the one that coined it. I think the first textbook came out in 1914. Grand scheme of things, it's a relatively new area of medicine and rehabilitation. But we often think of, geriatrics as the PT that's only working in the nursing home or the skilled nursing facility or in home health. And I think that is just completely false. Geriatrics spans to so many areas of healthcare, different settings of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and even fitness. And if I am thinking that this is this other specialized area of rehabilitation and I'm not interested in it or learning as much as I can, I'm going to do a lot of people a disservice, including myself. All right. So let's talk about, I got three reasons why every clinician is a geri clinician. And hear me out on these. All right. So the first one is just the reality that the vast majority of individuals that you're going to serve as a rehab provider are going to be older adults, right? I learned this one the hard way. I was the classic sports ortho PT bro in school. I had my ATC or athletic training certification in undergrad, at my CSCS before I got even to PT school. I was kind of lined up to be the sports PT. I wanted to work with athletes, work with the local high school, college team. You know the drill, right? And then I had my first outpatient job in area that I wanted to be in, people that I wanted to work with. There's a big running community that I was excited to be a part of. And in my mind, I thought, man, I'm going to be able to work with runners and probably get plugged into that local high school team. And then you get out and you realize that you're not treating those people for the vast majority of the day, right? From 9 a.m., 3 or 4 p.m., you're working with older adults. And I found myself as this sports PT that had a geriatric caseload, and that was not unique, right? Over 50%, that's probably a low number, but on average, over 50% of outpatient clinicians are going to be working with older adults. And then obviously, when you're in the hospital, in skilled nursing facility, in home health, acute rehab, long term care, a lot of those are going to be older adult prominent, right? Pediatric clinicians, I think they're the only ones that are not working with current older adults, but they're working with hopeful future older adults. So just knowing the vast majority of folks that you're going to work with are older adults. And if you don't show interest in this population and get good at serving them, then I think this is going to be a really frustrating career, because it's really frustrating when you don't feel like you're good at something, right? You want to be excellent, right? That's the whole premise of this whole organization, is that excellence solves a multitude of problems, especially related to your contentment and fulfillment in your career. When you have the capacity, the competence, the confidence to handle whatever walks through your doors or whatever you walk into when you're going into their room, you're probably going to enjoy your job a little bit better and you're going to probably get paid a little bit more. It's going to be a more fulfilling career. And so if you're largely going to be working with this population, but not actively trying to get better at serving them, that's going to be a really tough road. So that's the first reason. The vast majority of folks are going to be older adults. The second reason, and this I think is the most important, is that everybody wants to be an older adult. Every single person that you're working with is going to want to become older. It's one of the most universal goals of humanity, right? We want to live as long as possible, assuming we maintain our physical and mental capacities. And so for those clinicians, they're like, man, I'm not working with Betty that's, 92. You're probably working with a 40-some-year-old Betty that wants to become 92. The peds clinician, you're working with that little child named Timmy who's, 5 years old, is struggling with some type of maybe musculoskeletal issue, fracture, whatever issue is. Timmy wants to grow older. Timmy wants to become an older adult. And you are influencing that person right now, but also that person in the future. And for me, that is predominantly working with older adults. I see the impact of what previous healthcare providers done on a daily basis. Some are very profound, right? Where they interacted with that PT or that fitness professional that really challenged their perception of themselves, that encouraged them to pick up a new habit, that they got them back in the gym or helped them overcome a certain issue or injury, right? That really kind of set them up for an amazing life after that interaction. Unfortunately, I usually see the opposite, right? Where they had that PT that struck the fear of God in these folks about lifting more than 15 pounds with a rounded spine, or my gosh, you've got bone on bone arthritis. You probably should not do insert whatever life giving hobby that that person really wants to be able to do, right? So many nocebos, is what we call them, are injected into these folks. And I have the pleasure of working my ass off to try and reverse the damages of some of the words that have been said to folks. It's not just PTs, right? Obviously, we get a lot from physicians, but it's just the healthcare system in general and society at large. And I think of those clinicians that don't see themselves as Jerry PTs or OTs or fitness professionals that are working with these future older adults, that they have such a huge impact on that person right now, but in the future. And if we seize that opportunity and are able to have that positive influence and set that person up to think differently about what the future can hold, you can change that person's life. I've seen it, right? I've witnessed it. I've witnessed the good and the bad. So understanding that every single person you work with wants to become an older adult, and therefore you are a geri-clinician and you want to seize that opportunity. And then the last thing, and along the same lines of everyone wants to be an older adult, is you do too, right? Like, you know, you all that are watching this live right now, like ask yourself, like, do you want to live as long as possible, assuming you maintain your physical and mental capacities? Like, yeah, yeah. Don't you want to know how to do that well? Like, don't you want to know what's really important to, really set your future self up physically, mentally, psychologically, right? That's why in the older adult division, we talk about our clinicians, right, that go through our courses, that have our certification, that's wearing that badge of honor, like they are old people in training, meaning that we are preparing for that hopeful day that we are an older adult, right? What does that look like, right? It has implications from the physical side of things. Like, what does my training look like? I'm probably trying to lift some heavy weights and get strong. I'm probably working on my cardiovascular fitness. I'm probably challenging my balance and reaction timing and practicing cognitive dual tasking while I'm doing a task or an additional motor task, right? To build my capacity, because we know that is an issue for these folks as they age. I am doing that right now at the age of 40 to set 80-year-old, hopeful 90-year-old Dustin up to be as independent as possible, right? The physical implications are obvious. But then we also start to think about it from the mental side of things, that we grapple with our mortality, right? We're all inching towards the grave. We need to think about these things and prepare for these things. We need to know there's going to be some amazing connections and relationships formed over the years, and we're also going to lose a lot of those relationships. We have an accurate understanding of the good, but then also the struggles that come along with this process that we're all going to experience. We're not putting it off and assuming that we're going to maintain our youth forever. We have a very realistic perspective, but it's also becomes a motivating perspective that I'm going to live this life as full as I can, because we know as geri-clinicians, it is not promised, right? We know that there is an end to this life at some point, and it informs so much of who you are, what you think about, and then how you live your life. We are old people in training. And that's, I think, for me, the biggest surprise out of kind of going into this specialty. When I really embraced that identity as a geriatric clinician, it helped me love my job more because I was more effective at serving these folks. And it's very, very fulfilling. It also helped me see how it could influence maybe younger individuals and what that looked like in the future. But it's had the most implications for me in my life and how I use my time and what I don't use my time on. And I am so grateful to have that perspective now, as opposed to so many folks I interact with that light bulb really switches in their 60s and their 70s when the end is approaching much more closer. So, all that to say, you, my friends, are Jerry clinicians. You want to embrace that identity. It's going to make your job a whole lot easier. It's going to make your life better, even if you are not predominantly working with older adults. All right. Thank you all for hanging out with me on this lovely Wednesday. Let me know your thoughts. Comment over here in the app on that video. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. One thing I want to leave you with: Older Adult Level 1, our 8-week online cohort based course starts May 20th. This is our 8-week deep dive into a lot of research, into a lot of application across settings. This is our fundamental course to help people become that older adult in training, but then also to be able to be confident and handle working with this population across a multitude of function and settings, with a heavy emphasis on exercise and fighting frailty that is going to be very effective in your plans of care. May 20th is when that starts. Thank y'all for your time, and I will talk to y'all soon.